All right, what's up, everybody? It is Monday, December 5th. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And today I'm super excited to have our special guest. And his name is Michael Mershad, who has over 32 years of martial arts experience and is an eighth degree black belt in a blended Tae Kwon Do system. He's a Master Martial Arts Instructor and has been a martial arts school owner for over 24 years. Mr. Mershad is a small business coach for martial arts school owners and a public speaker who teaches leadership, motivation, and overcoming challenge. His passion is helping people break out of their quote average and into an extraordinary life. He says average isn't bad, although he believes, however, that there is far more in people than they even know. He has navigated what is to be a leader through good times and bad, and through several seasons of life. Michael is a proud husband for over 25 years and a father of four amazing girls: Madison, Bailey, Reese, and Aspen. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks. Appreciate it. Love being on these things and just sharing and getting to know people better and getting them to know me better.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to let you share your story, and let's just start it right from the beginning as far as martial arts goes, because we have a lot of martial arts friends in common, and that's our passion. So talk about how you got involved in martial arts.
So that's part of the journey, right? So part of my story is that my family moved around a lot, and so that's where some of the motivation comes from. Is I never really kind of fit in anywhere. My family moved about 6, 7 times as a kid, so I'd go from one school to another, sometimes in the middle of the school year, sometimes in the beginning. So always being the new kid. I was training. I'm sorry, I was living at the time in Jackson, Mississippi. Wasn't fitting in super well. So my dad saw an ad in the newspaper. I was 12 years old for martial arts. And so he's like, I'm tired of you getting picked on and beat up. At least if you're going to get picked on, at least you're going to win some fights. So he put me in martial arts. Again, back then, there was no like kids class in the school I was training at. There was just martial arts class, and you were in the class. And so I was in there with adults, and 12 years old. If you can't tell, I'm not a huge guy. So I was a tiny guy in that program. And so that's what got me started is, basically, bullying, saved my life, I guess, or made it.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people that started martial arts will tell you the very same thing. They started because maybe they were getting bullied. Maybe they just wanted to feel part of a team that they weren't getting from team sports. And it's funny because a lot of people talk about starting in martial arts and how if you started in the early years, there weren't a lot of kids classes, or it was just kind of like one big class and everybody trained together, right?
Right, right.
So, hey, real quick, let's give a shout out. Mr. Daniel Groff is watching, my good friend. Thank you for being on here today. Let me know if, as you're watching, if you have any questions for Michael. And those of you that are watching live, please comment. Let us know that you're here and let us know where you're from. And if you have any questions for Michael or myself, we'd love to interact with our audience. So please drop those in the comments. So,
Cool.
starting out in martial arts at 12 years old, I believe you said, kind of getting bullied, picked on, getting in some fights. How did that change over the course of the next several months or years as you were training in martial arts?
Um, so, it's one of those things where training the martial arts, obviously, if you do that, what the transformation is. You walk different, you talk different. And it's funny because people stopped picking on me. It was kind of frustrating, because I knew what to do now, right? And so it was one of those things where once I started training, I guess, the way I carried myself was just a little bit different, and the way I perceived things was a little bit different. And I had something that was mine that other people didn't have, because back then when you did martial arts, you didn't tell people you did martial arts. You didn't wear the t-shirt or anything like that. Back then it was like you didn't want to tell people. And I still kind of get that a little bit today with some of the kids, but it's a lot different now because of, you know, media and movies and everything like that. Martial arts is cool, but back then you didn't really tell people. So I felt like I had something that was mine, that other people couldn't relate to. So that really helped. But I mean, even fun story when I was, if you don't know the martial arts, you go white belt, then you go yellow belt, then you go, green or whatever. Well, when I was a yellow belt, maybe, I don't know, 10 weeks into my training, 12, 20 weeks into my training, whatever it was, I told my dad that I wanted to quit. And so what had happened was I was also playing football and I didn't have the class credits to test, and everybody else tested. And I was still the yellow belt. I didn't move on to the next belt. And I felt stupid. They passed me up, and he basically looked at me and said, if you quit now, you're going to be quitting for the rest of your life. If you quit, if I, you quit soccer, you quit baseball, you quit this, you quit that. If I let you quit martial arts, I just know you're just gonna, you're gonna quit things for the rest of your life. And that was amazing advice. And like for 15, 20 years, I used that. I talked about it all the time. And then one day he told me, he goes, yeah, I mainly did that because I paid for a year up front and I wasn't going to get my money back. So I just wanted you to finish out the year at least. And so, yeah, here we are 32 years later.
It worked out. It
It
worked out.
worked. Yep.
Now you mentioned that when you were 12 and you started martial arts, that you started to walk different, talk different. Did you actually feel that? Do you remember that feeling of increased confidence? Because we talk about it as martial arts school owners, and as instructors. We talk about the benefits of martial arts, of discipline, respect, confidence, all these things. But did you actually feel it, or when do you remember feeling more confident because of martial arts?
I'm not sure I ever really could put my finger on it at the time. I do remember going from, I don't even know if they do dances anymore, but going from being terrified to ask a girl to go to one of the dances, and it felt like there was
Hmm.
a dance like every quarter, to asking girls in the grade above me, or whatever, to go to dances and things like that. So I remember thinking I would have never done this a year ago, but I wouldn't have said necessarily back then it was martial arts. But knowing what I went through in martial arts, being a small kid, and they didn't, it wasn't careful back then when you sparred. I mean, if you got kicked, you got kicked. If you didn't block, you got hit. You got punched in the face. And so, going up against guys that are a lot more talented than me and holding my own, and them saying, "Man, you did a good job." I thought I was going to get you or whatever. So a lot of those things were happening, but at 12, 13, 14 years old, I don't think I put my finger on it back then. But
Hmm.
looking back, I can absolutely see, how that, helped me trend upward, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I can remember being in probably middle school or high school, and I started when I was 10 years old, and it was like sparring, right? You got used to sparring, and there was just this you didn't ever fear a fight. Like, I mean, we didn't go looking for fights. Like, it was almost as if I got to fight for fun. I used to tell my friends, like, why am I going to get in a fight with anybody? I get to do it for fun at the karate school. And it just became, it was like normal that we just sparred and fought, and we just didn't look for that, and we could walk away easier. No big deal, right?
Sure,
um,
absolutely.
so now, before that, let's go back a little bit. Before 12 years old, you moved a lot, and maybe even after you're 12, you moved a lot. Was this a mom and dad job, military? What made you guys move so much when you were younger?
Yeah, so my dad would go from one retail company to the other, big name retail. Some of them are around still, some of them aren't. And he would either get them in a position to get out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, or to go into it, or to go through a sale of a company. And so he was always with these big, like Macy's type of things. And he'd go in and he'd be there for a couple of years. He'd reorganize the company, and then he'd go and get hired into the company to do the same thing. So that's what we did. So I was a retail kid, and I'd go from one to the other. And
Hmm.
so that also led to where I am now. I have a big retail side of me. I love making the pro shop look just right. I love marketing, and all that stuff kind of came from my dad as well.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So where? Just give us a couple examples of different places that you lived as you were growing up.
Yeah, so Knoxville, Tennessee, Tampa, Marietta, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Like I said, Jackson, Mississippi, and then back to Atlanta. Moved around that area quite a bit.
And where did you guys finally settle in, and where did it become your home?
So let's see. So I met my wife, who, ironically, her father was in the car industry and did almost the exact same thing. She moved actually twice as much as I did growing up, and so we instantly kind of had a lot to bond over. Always being a new kid and things like that. And so we met the summer after our junior year, so the summer of our senior year, I guess. And so we dated that whole year. And then we found out a month before graduation that we were having a child. We were both had college we were going to. We were both going to go to college nearby in Georgia. And so we kind of said, okay, well, what are we going to do? So we got married in July 14th. So that would have been about 6 weeks after high school graduation. We
Oh.
felt like it was a dress up play because we just got done walking with our cap and gown. And then we're planning our wedding literally a couple weeks later. And so at that point, I'll kind of fast forward. You can dig in wherever you want to, but all I knew was martial arts, and I had to, provide for my family, my new family. And so I went to work at a school that I was managing, and I was, the idea was I was going to purchase that school at the end of a year. at the end of that year, it just didn't go well. The negotiation didn't go well, whatever. So my dad said, "Hey, you've got this money that was for college. We were going to use this as a down payment on this martial arts school in Atlanta. Why don't you just use this to go open up somewhere else?" So my wife and I said, "Okay." We drove all over Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. In the meantime, my dad was up in Ohio, CEO of a company called Elder Beerman that's not around anymore. So we found a spot in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was 3,200 square foot spot, great space, great shopping center, great area. And I was 19, so my dad
Mm.
had to co-sign on the lease, and he said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. If you go around with a commercial real estate agent around the Dayton, Ohio area for 2 days, and if you don't find anything you like in Dayton, Ohio, I'll co-sign on it." So he's flying me up there for free. He's feeding me. He's taking me around. So I can't really say no, right?
Hmm.
So my wife and I went up there, and on the first day, I went through, looked at all these places. One of them was a shopping center that had a martial arts school in it already, and the landlord's like, "But don't worry, it's going out of business." I'm like, I don't want to go in that place." So I was very convinced that Charlotte, North Carolina, was going to be my home for a long time. And lo and behold, the second day, my wife and I, with our 1 year old, wheeling her in her little seat there, found the space that we're in now and have been for the past 20, it'll be 24 years now that we actually found it, and 24 years in February that we opened.
Nice.
So
And
Dayton,
you're
Ohio
in
is the short end. The long answer, the short answer is Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio became home. Wow. So what an amazing story that you and your wife met early in life and in high school, ended up getting married right out of high school and having your first child. What was that like being a, real young family and opening your business? What were some of the struggles that you went through?
So, I mean, one was anytime I'd go like to the schools to promote the school, they always told me to go to class. They're like, "You need to get to class on." I'm like, I don't go to class here. I'm here to market my martial arts school. So different things like that. Starting an adult program in a martial arts school, being 19, I guess I was 20 when we actually opened, but being 20 years old, and again, not a big guy. I'm not some big 6 foot tall. I'm 5'7.5", 5'8" on a good day, depending on my shoes. So starting adult class and having them call me Mr. Mershad, having them call me Sir at 20 years old was really weird. And I remember being back then asking one of my mentors back then, "How do I do this?" And they said, "Don't force it. Just go over time and don't force it." And so that's been a big thing for me, is I don't have to force who I am to anybody. I don't have to force it. Just be me, be myself. Go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings, talk to
Hmm.
adults, learn from them. Don't act like you know anything, okay? Because then they're gonna think you're just know-it-all kid, and just listen to people. And so that's what I
Hmm.
did. I just I did that, and my wife and I, we made our business plan because we were told we should have a business plan. It was really funny because one thing we never I wish I still had it, but one thing we never accounted for was attrition. Because why would anybody quit? Why would anybody quit my program, right? Why would
Right.
anyone quit our? So we were millionaires, mentally millionaires by year two, right? That didn't end up happening quite like that. I mean, we did have some struggles financially, because I was raised in a home that never wanted for anything, and I was also raised, and where if we wanted something, we kind of had it. And so I kind of kept living that way. And I wasn't making the money that my parents were making, obviously. And so we did have to learn. You can't have everything you want. And sometimes you learn that the hard way.
Mm. Well, listen, Rick Rando is on here watching us today, and he said this gentleman's story is very relatable. Average is forgotten. Go Buckeyes.
Right.
Um, thanks, Rick. Thanks for watching. Thanks for always being supportive of the show. Appreciate you. And make sure you guys go check out Rando Speaks. He's got some great podcasts, great videos as well. Um, Man, we do. Your story is relatable to me in the way that I started my school at 19 years old. I started martial arts, like I said, at 10. Started teaching probably when I was 13, 14, kind of assisting here and there. By the time I earned my black belt at 17, I was teaching almost every single day. And there wasn't an opportunity for me to have a career at the school that I was training at. I don't think that was ever really the plan anyway. So I decided that I was going to go open my own school at 19. And man, let me tell you, you think you know a lot just because you've been teaching martial arts and people like your class and they keep coming back. But you're right.
Hmm.
Like you don't really truly understand what attrition is. You don't really truly understand what budgeting is. And I mean, I didn't have a background in any business whatsoever. I mean, I did go to a couple years of junior college, but really didn't focus on anything, any kind of major. So my business experience was really limited to what my instructor did and how my instructor did it, and also watching my parents and how they did things. And it sounds like yours is a similar situation. And you know, it wasn't exactly a hands-on education. It was just kind of like learn as you go.
Right.
So you talked about some of the challenges of that starting out. When did things really start to turn around for you, and when did you see some things clicking in your business?
So we did really well early on. I mean, we had 100 students by month 5 or 6, which doesn't happen. I mean, I think the thing was the average martial arts school has like 60 to 75 students. That's a couple of years old, that statistic, but I didn't know that. The internet wasn't what it is today. You didn't how many students should I have? Like, so I didn't know. I just knew what other people were doing in their schools, and I just wanted to have students also. And so as we as we grew the school and things like that, we just like I said, so education on the go. My wife did what a lot of wives in the martial arts do. She did the stuff I didn't want to do, and so learning budgeting, learning and again learning the hard way, as far as if somebody else got this new cool kicking bag, I needed three, right? Because it's just learning as you go, and learning the hard way was definitely a huge part of our process.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife was just as involved very early on. We also met in high school, married a little bit later, after she graduated high school. Excuse me, as graduated college. We met in high school, graduated in college, and then we got married. And but she was there from the very beginning, and it's funny. Martial arts wives do kind of do that. They do all the stuff that we don't want to do. We want to teach. We like the spotlight. We like
Right.
all the fun part, and they get to deal with the stuff at the front desk. Um,
Exactly.
that and not always the fun part. I still to this day would much rather be out on the mat teaching a class than sitting behind my desk. I don't know about you, but
Absolutely.
and but it's definitely changed over the years. Talk about your training real quick a little bit. You trained with adults, and it was a tough, rough and tough, sparring. But like you're from a blended system of Taekwondo. What was your training like, and earning your black belt and becoming an instructor?
Yeah. So again, yeah, training at 12, my dad bribed me with a Sega Genesis. Again, that tells you how old I am. Sonic the Hedgehog saved my martial arts career also. So he said, you stay with martial arts for a year, I'll let you get the Sega Genesis. I got the Sega Genesis, trained. When the first year was over, I was hooked. I loved training. I remember, sparring different people back then and just getting slammed around. To me, it was normal, right? I mean, how did you do it back then? Well, it was normal. That guy got smacked around. I'm going to get smacked around. And I remember was one guy, Mr. Brewer, don't know what his first name was, incredible athlete, incredible fighter. I wanted to have jump, spin, crescent kicks just like him. So I asked him one day, I said, how do you do that? What do I do? And he just told me, hey, jump spin 10 times after every class. Just do a jump spin. And then after next belt testing, do spin crescents 10 after every class. And after the next belt testing, do jump spin crescents 10 after every class. And I did, and I like that was one of my favorite kicks. Still is. I still love teaching that kick because I worked at it, right, and I got it. And looking back, he was probably like 16 years old. In my head, he was like 28 years old. This athlete, But so I trained, and then I got my red belt, which, if you don't know martial arts, again, it's a couple months before black belt. Two testings for us. It was red, then senior red, then black. And and if any of my Mississippi old Facebook friends are on here, I'm sorry. I hated Mississippi. I didn't fit in. I didn't love it. It wasn't my spot. Martial arts was my thing. But I found out when I was at a summer camp, a 6-week summer camp. Again, that's how much I didn't like Mississippi. Sorry, guys. That my family was moving back to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was so pumped. Could not believe I was moving back there. And they said there's a martial arts school there in our same organization that had just opened in April of the previous year. And so I was going in as a red belt to this martial arts school that is relatively new, right? I think he had, when I got there, it seemed like he had like 75 to 100 students, but I had no idea. I was 15. Um, and so I was a red belt at this new school, and I trained there and I tested for my black belt. I was so super pumped. It's hard to believe that I got my black belt and I was only there for maybe 6 months before I got my black belt, because that felt like home. And my martial
Mm.
arts instructor, Mr. Starr, hey Mr. Starr, if you're watching, took over as a huge part of my growth and as my as a mentor. And so he would push us, and he would push us, and I just remember, when I started getting good, I went to tournaments, competed in tournaments all the time. I didn't know. This is how stupid I was. I never knew tournaments were optional. My parents signed me up for tournaments, made me do tournaments. I didn't know until I worked for my instructor that tournaments were optional. My mom and dad loved traveling, and so we'd go to Natchez, Mississippi for a tournament. We'd go to Birmingham, Alabama. We'd go to Chattanooga. And about the time I was a second degree black belt, I started winning. I started winning, and winning is addictive, right? And so I started training even harder. And back then, I think I trained probably 6 days a week as a teenager, and so I just saw, work equals reward. Work equals reward. My instructor was a huge Zig Ziglar fan, so I always had Zig. He always handed me the cassette tape, so I always had one in my car. Always had the cassette tape of Zig Ziglar, always in my car, and that's what I listened to from school to then work. Working for my instructor, getting my and becoming an instructor there. Clean the baseboards, clean the toilets, and just feeling like I was the luckiest dude on the planet. I went from school to working, getting paid cash. But that was a life that again, it was mine. It was my thing, and it wasn't other people's thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, isn't it cool that, like, I mean, you feel like when you're the instructor and you kind of get that um sense of ownership of the school, cleaning the bathrooms, mopping the mats. I remember it was like my favorite time of the night. I would turn up the music and we had just finished a hard workout or whatever, and I'd be mopping the mat, and I was just like, I would be mopping the mat thinking, this is the coolest place in the
Right.
world. I love being here. And here I am mopping the mat and cleaning bathrooms. Like, what teenager, first of all, even takes any pride in any of that? But
Sure.
it just goes to show that we love it so much. We just love
Yeah, I
the
mean,
martial arts
3
school.
years of my high school career was I'd get up at 6 a.m. I would commute because I lived in Marietta, Georgia. I went to school in downtown Atlanta, my high school was. So I'd commute to downtown Atlanta with a million other people. I would go
Hmm.
to school. I would get out at 3:30. I would change into my uniform, and then I would drive to work. I would, be behind the counter or helping with classes or teaching classes, depending on how far my progression. I would clean the school, wipe down whatever I needed to do. I'd get home at 9:30, start doing homework, go to bed at like midnight, and then wake up the next day and do the same thing over and over again. But that was literally life for 3 of the 4 years of high school for sure.
And you loved it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey guys, this is Jason Flame, and I'm here with Michael Mershad, and we're just telling his story about martial arts training. Opened his martial arts school at 19. You
I
opened it.
was 20. My wife was 19. Yeah.
All right, man. Starting young, young family, young start, and here you are now, 24 years married, and four kids. Now, are all of your kids involved in martial arts?
Oh, here we go. This is fun too. So yeah, 25 years married, 24 years as a parent.
There you
But
go.
yes. So yeah, we our kids have always trained. My oldest right now is about to be 25. I've got my 22-year-old. Those two are married. Then I've got my 18-year-old and then my 13-year-old. And so the requirement is you have to train. You have to train. You're required to train. They know they have to train until they graduate high school. In our system, you can earn your fourth degree black belt when you're 17, and so that's the requirement. You have to test. You have to get your fourth degree black belt. We're not signing on college loans. We're not giving you a car to drive or doing any of that unless you train. You have to do it. So there were years where that was rough. They didn't want to do it, especially high school. The older two, I would say that the older two,
Mhm.
the younger two haven't given us as much flack, but they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go to class, but they also knew I wasn't going to back down. This is what you do. If you live in our house, you do martial arts. They did other things. They did cheerleading. They did, other things in addition to that, but you got to train. And so my older two, for sure, they graduated from high school. They got their fourth degree black belts. They went off to college at their two different times, and they said, "Not doing this again. Not doing this again." In college, they both actually had preschool programs they taught and made some extra money on the side. Besides that, though, they were done with martial arts. My oldest daughter then graduated from Xavier University, and this is in 2020. She got a job with Ohio Eagle Beer Distributing as her events manager, 40 hours a week, good pay. I think it was like 50, 55,000, whatever it is a year. And she went to work in the work business, in the field, right? She's done training. And she liked it for a little while, but then 40 hours turned into like 60 hours. The pay did not go up. She saw, this is a great job, great people, but I'm very limited here. In the
Mhm.
meantime, our manager, who was doing a great job for us, he moved on to a different career. He did a good job with it. He just said, "Hey, I just, I'm moving on." We kind of knew it was coming, and he did it the right way. He still trained with us and things like that. But there was that opening, and then my daughter Maddie found out how much we were paying him and said, "Wait a minute, that's more than I'm getting paid here." and is working with my family. And so she came back in, it's a year ago in October, and she's been training since. Her fiance started training. Then from there, my other daughter moved back from college, and she got married, and she started training. So everyone's back training again. All of them work for us. Maddie's our manager. My daughter Bailey is our preschool director and our summer camp director. My 18-year-old is working for us here and there. She also is going for medical or for dentistry into as a trade school in high school, and so she's actually working at a dentist office as well. And then my 13-year-old also works for us 2 days a week and gets a paycheck as well.
So what's that like? Now having everybody work under one roof. As it is, it's hard. Working with your wife, right, and working side by side. There's some benefits. There's some struggles with that. But then, like having the whole family, like, is there ever a time where the martial arts gets turned off and we're talking about something else?
Sometimes just because the husbands get bored of my two older ones. So sometimes, but I don't. I always try to come off as authentic as humanly possible. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. There are times that there are certain stresses and things like that. But my wife and I have always worked together. We grew up together, basically, right? I mean, we became adults together. We raised so we've always shared an office. We've always worked really well together. We don't work well apart at all, as far as the company goes, especially. And then, there are challenges when your kids are working for you. My second child, Bailey, she got fired twice when she worked for us. We fired, she had to still train, but we fired her because she was on her phone. She wasn't doing, she was in the office. She wasn't where she was supposed to be. She's on Pinterest. And she went to work for, other people, and she came right back. She's like, please rehire me. Um, and so there have been challenges, but overall, I kind of get jealous when they're at work and I'm at home. We also just got a new school in Cincinnati, so I've kind of been focusing there. I know that they're in the main school teaching, and I'm kind of like, I kind of wish I was around them right now, right? So there is that. Sometimes my oldest, and if you're watching, hey Maddie, my oldest doesn't want to tell me bad news sometimes because she thinks I'll get frustrated or whatever. So some of that, comes down like, you can tell me, am I going to get stressed? Sure, but I've been stressed for 24 years. Like, I've learned to manage that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, talking about stress,
yes.
um, four daughters and a wife. You live a life surrounded by women. Um, Tell me about that.
I get asked about that a lot. Like, how do you do that? But really, it's my reality. Like, I don't know any different. I don't know any different. I've not known any different since I was 19 years old. I've had Maddie since then, and so it's my reality, right? And so we're very, like I said, authentic as far as things go. We tell our kids stuff if stuff happens. If we've had marital issues or whatever, our kids know about that stuff. So we're very open with that. So they know they can talk to us about whatever, and that translates into the business. That translates into getting together and um, so it's really what I know. I get a
Hmm.
lot of. We don't have a ton of drama as far as girls. Oh, they're all so much drama. We really haven't had a ton of that. If we have, it's been you got to hear about the drama that somebody else is having. I'm like, thank God that's not us. But yeah, it's my reality, and I think they're great, and they think I think they think we're great too. But yeah, it's really great. If you when you have adult kids, I think you're there. I think you have one in high school, right? One out of college. I mean, adult
Yeah,
kids can be really fun as well.
yeah, it's definitely. I'm at that stage. My daughter, who is also a Madison, Madison is going to be 21 next year.
Okay.
And so yeah, having an adult child is very different. My son is 17. He's a senior in high school. I mean, he's essentially becoming an adult, and it's just very different. I just remember, so many times of them as young kids, and just those special times and spending time with them and making memories, and the sports and the activities and the trips to Disneyland, and just it was just so different. But what I love now is our kids have been raised in the martial arts school as well. My daughter doesn't train regularly. My son does train a ton. My wife is involved in the business, but not training quite as much. But I mean, martial arts is not just part of our life. I mean, it is a major part of our life. It's our lifestyle. But we also have a lot of other things going on in our life. But what I love is that now as adults, we can learn from them differently. Like we learn from our kids when they're young, but we really can listen and learn a little bit more from them now. I'm almost kind of amazed and somewhat baffled sometimes. I go, wow, that was really well thought out. Whatever they might have said. Sometimes it's an argument. I actually think that sometimes when they argue with us now, I have to admit to myself that they bring up good points where I have to go, you know what? I think you're right. And
Absolutely,
that's kind of a tough one as a parent to be able to concede to that. But yeah, having adult children is very interesting. It's very cool, and having just having them have more input as far as what's going on as well.
for sure.
So I love that you're in Cincinnati, Ohio now, by the way, because I have a family of students that actually just moved not too long ago from here to there, and I've already referred them to go check you guys out. So I'm going to make sure that I'm
Awesome,
I'm following up on that. But they'll be a great family, really good family. So you'll enjoy them if they can make it out there. But
cool.
let's talk, about the business and how it's changed for you. Again, as a young kid, you're flying by the seat of your pants for the most part, but things have changed a lot now, especially with having three schools, right? So being a multiple school owner is very different than being a single school owner. Talk about, how you come to learn a lot of your systems, how you built your team to keep them, all in place, and just kind of talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so we in 2008 we were with the organization I started with, right? And they taught us a whole bunch. They were great people, great organization. Then they went the franchise route. We chose not to sign the franchise agreement. We chose to go our own way. I won't get into a lot of detail because, again, a lot of great people in that organization. It just wasn't for us. We made a business decision that came across, I think, to a lot of people as a personal decision. That it wasn't. It was a very hard decision to make, actually. But I remember one of the head people of that group literally said to me, "Well, you're going to just have to take out a blank sheet of paper. You can't use anything we've ever taught you and just start over." Best advice I ever got. And it was a very closed system. I felt like I was in a snow globe and I made my way out of the snow globe.
Hmm.
And again, great people in there. Again, I love these people. They have great schools still. I still am in contact with a lot of them. But we did. This was November, um, and they said, "Well, you need to be completely absent of anything from us by January 1st. We're going to have attorneys on your doorsteps, things like that." We were like, "Okay." So we go away for Christmas every year for 2 weeks in Florida. So that year, for 2 straight weeks, we were hammered away. Why do we do forms like we do? Why do we spar like we do? Why do and some things were because it works. Why do we have this? Why do we do that? What are our policies? Why are those our policies? And then I started doing something that was very not okay in my head in the other organization is I called anyone who went to martial arts school who would talk to me. I called anyone. Hey, I just, I've never done anything else outside this before. How do you do your black belt testing? How do you do your master's testing? How do you, and anybody who would talk to me, I just rattled off question after question after question. I didn't know there was a housing issue in 2008 or 2009. I was busy. I was reorganizing my entire company. I had no idea that there was anything going on outside of that. And so 2009 was our biggest growth year because we took out a blank sheet of paper and we resystematized everything. What belt level you can become an instructor, what you had to know to become an instructor. And we built a team. We went from my wife and I and one or two part-time people and then, one or two little volunteers to having about 35 volunteers and having 10 people on staff. We went from about 170, 180 students up to 250, then up to 300. Now we're at 330. And it was, and now we do have one full time besides my wife and I. And I think we have 16 part timers that come in and just love coming in to help teach classes and things like that. So we resystematize everything. Like, why can't I touch the board right before I break the board at testing? Why can't I do that? We took that, like, I don't know why. So we put these rules in, and why do we make this happen? And so we took everything, and nothing was off the table. And we resystematized all of our forms patterns. We resystematized how we do sparring. We resystematized literally how we run a class. And so that led to growth. And we also talked to other martial arts school owners, and we helped them kind of install some of those systems as well.
Mhm. Now, did you employ any coaching or any get involved in any programs that helped you with your business?
Um, so we I'm trying to think here. a good timeline to give you, but a lot of it was seeing what systems are out there. You know, if there was a system that someone was running for something, an instructor program, I think we bought it. We looked into it to see how it was, and we took bits and pieces of a lot of, like a lot of people do. I think when they kind of go off on their own, right?
Hmm.
I didn't really have a mentor necessarily. I mean, it was my wife and I. You know, it's always kind of felt like us against the world. So you know, we just came up with all these things and we tried it. We tried a uniform system. It didn't work out very well. It looked ugly. It was too messy, and so we did that. We tried the way we did forms and we didn't like it. We redid that. Then I reached out to Mr. Kovar, who I know is a good, great guy, and you've had him on the show, and he really helped us also really think through some things. He came on as a mentor. I don't talk to him as often as I want to, but you know, he definitely helped shape a lot of the way we run our classes as well.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, Master Kovar, one of the best in the business as far as leadership training and systems, and just to me, like an overall cool guy. That, like,
Sure.
if you follow him, if anybody follows Dave Kovar on social media, just his messages, I love all of his messages. I use his quotes so much, but really insightful information, a lot of wisdom. We had him here for an instructor training several years ago, but I've gotten to know him many years over going to the Super Show and going to some of the extra events. And there's so many people out there that have a lot of information. And that's kind of my next question is, there's so many people out there, and there's so many different ways of doing things in the martial arts industry. Um, what are your thoughts on where the martial arts industry is heading? Or because we come from a very, if you look back in, like, the 70s, early 80s, martial arts business wasn't even really talked about much by very few. And then it kind of went into lots of uh what's the word I'm looking for? Lots of groups of schools, and then there started becoming the branding, and you'd have all the you know big groups of schools. ATA was formed, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s. Maybe I could be totally off, but anyway, and then you get into now. I mean, there's martial arts gurus, specialists, consultants, all this stuff, lots of information out there.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, how do you decipher all the information that's out there, or do you just do what's best for you and just kind of tune out some of the noise that's there?
So this is when you can get into a lot of trouble. Is who you listen to, who you pair up with, and things like that. So I didn't know anything about about outside of my shell. I didn't know anything. I went to their events. And so I didn't. I went to the Super Show, I think, once way back then, but I didn't know who to listen to, who not to listen to. So I mean, you kind of go the hard way. I think one of the things is, with one thing social media does, is it makes you think that you need to do everything everyone else is doing. Oh, they're doing jujitsu, we need to do jujitsu. They're doing cardio, this, we need to do this. And like, one thing that I wish I could tell myself from, when I was younger, is you don't have to do it all. And
Hmm.
if you want to do it all, you don't have to do it all now. We started the licensing program that we do, and I was 32 years old at the time, and I was too young to start it. I shouldn't have started it, but I was convinced I have a good product, and I did. I still do. I love the product, but I was convinced this is when I need to start it. And if I could go back to myself, I would have said, get a decade in of doing these systems. And if people want to know, tell them how to do it. But it's not the season. Your kids are too young. You've got too much going on. It's not the right season. I'm getting ready to go into a season where it might be the right season. But
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing. Is I think this is really good, and jiu-jitsu is really good. But is right now the right time for me to do it? Or, that type of questioning. Is it this marketing? It's going to cost this much. It might be good. Is this the right time? And if it's yes, then it's yes. But I think that deciding I'm just going to do all the same programs everyone else is doing isn't super helpful. I think, um, you know, I don't know if I answered the question fully or not, but
Yep.
I think the biggest thing is be discerning in what you're going to do, and don't feel like you have to do it all. Don't feel like you have to do it all now, because that gets you
Yeah.
into trouble.
Well, I think that's some good advice, because it is with social media. There is so much, and I'll be honest, I feel it. I'm watching this person and that person and this person and that person over and over and every day, and I'm like, man, I should be doing that. I should be doing that. I need to do this. I need to do more. And you get to this where you start focusing on more and doing this, but losing focus on, like, here's where we are,
Right.
and we can move in that direction. It can be overwhelming.
Absolutely.
In in a lot of different ways, not just in our business, but otherwise. But guys, hey, I want to remind you again. This is Jason Flame talking with Michael Mershad. We're having a great conversation today. Anybody that's watching live, if you have any questions or any comments, anything you want to throw to interact with us here, we definitely welcome that and would love to hear from you. I see that we've got several people still watching live, and if you're watching the replay, feel free to share the video and comment, and I'll be checking that back. Um, let's talk about, outside of martial arts. What are some of your hobbies, interests, things that you like to do outside of martial arts?
So outside martial arts, definitely my wife and I enjoy wine. So we're big wine drinkers as far as, kind of different things like that. Like it's not big. I don't want to come across that way. But with that, we also we just love traveling, love hanging out with our kids, and if eating is a hobby. We do that. I'm a big Call of Duty guy, so enjoy that as kind of a downtime thing. So yeah, we do a lot of martial arts and a lot of hanging out. So that's about that's the life right now.
Very cool. Well, speaking of Call of Duty, we have Dylan Price, who is I don't know if you watch anybody that does the big competitions for Call of Duty, but Dylan Price, here in our town in Moorpark, California, one of the highest paid players to
Wow.
do Call of Duty. He's attach. Is it phase attach? Attach. Anyway, if you know anything about the online gamers, I
Right.
don't play. I have not played video games since probably The Legend of Zelda. That's
Oh,
like the
there you
last
go.
game that I remember, or
That's
Mortal
a good one.
Kombat. Like that was fun to play. But I have a lot of friends that play it. I know my son has played a bunch of that. What are some business plans or anything kind of brewing, thinking about as you're moving forward?
So not to self promote, but you asked the question, right? So we do have something called the Ultimate Arsenal that we're releasing next year. I'm hoping it's before summer. It's just going to be, what a lot of people have is we've collected so much information, and we, like I said, we went into the consulting thing, 2013, I think it was. So it'll be 10 years soon, and it was not the right time. But I had all this content, and so just getting it out to the right people. And one thing that I made a big mistake in when I started this program is putting the word organization or association in the name. Terrified people, and so I've got great content, but people don't want to do it because the word association is attached to it, right? And so
Mm,
we're just putting it all together, packaging it up, putting it out there, and whoever wants to use it, cool. If they don't want to use it, cool. And kind of going from there. I looked at, again, it's that, is it the right season, and is this something I need to do? I looked at what Mr. Kovar was doing, and I felt like I need to do what he's doing, and I don't need to be where he's at. Okay, he's far ahead of me in his martial arts journey. And I don't need to be Dave Kovar because there's already a Dave Kovar, right? So I kind of, when I was going through all this, that's what I wanted to do, and it was, I need to work on being Michael Mershad a little bit because only one person can do that. And so, not I didn't realize also how many, like you said, how many consultants there are, how many old programs there are out there. And so, not feeling like I don't need to compete against any of those. I'm going to take my stuff, put it out there. I don't need to make a profit off it. So if it does, cool. If it doesn't, then it's there for the people who want to use it. So we're releasing that this next year. But again, it's just, I'm not going to go as big and bad as what I thought I needed to do. Again, I
mhm.
think that gets you into trouble.
You mentioned much earlier, almost near the beginning, and I didn't follow up on it. Being involved with your Chamber of Commerce, are you still heavily involved in your Chamber of Commerce? And what kind of community service and community engagement do you guys participate in?
So over the years, it's done this. It's based on the season. I've got four kids, and the differences of age. We've got 2 years between the first two, and then 5 years and 5 years. And so, depending on the age of my kids, I've had to detach in years that it just didn't make sense, and I've had to engage in years that did make sense. So we're very involved in the community as far as being there, being present, and that sort of thing. One thing that we do is part of our leadership program is, as a black belt, you can do your service project. And so we highly encourage our guys to do their service projects. We've done different things. We collect things and go around clean things and stuff like that. But we encourage them to do it. So to get the service patch on their sleeve, they have to organize their own service project. And it can be as simple as one of our kids. He went out with his grandfather, and for a couple hours, they collected trash at his elementary school. He had three huge garbage bags of trash, and he got his service patch, right? And so we just encourage them to not doing Habitat for Humanity is awesome, but they have to organize it. They have to be the ones that lead it. And so, one thing for years that we said was that we teach leadership. We teach leadership. And when I left what we were doing and started our new thing, I was like, we don't actually teach leadership. We teach kicking and punching, and there is leadership inherently in that. But I want to be purposeful in teaching leadership.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want to be purposeful in teaching people how to lead, because eventually these 5-year-olds are going to be doing job interviews. I don't want my guys to stand out. They're gonna put college interviews. They're gonna have a resume, and I want them to stand out. And so
Hmm.
we started purposefully doing a lot of that early on. So that's the service side of it. Definitely is heavily the students, not us.
Hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that things, kind of went in those stages with the different ages of your kids. I can definitely see that. For us, that's actually what was the catalyst to getting more involved in our community because as I did a podcast just earlier today talking about this, the way that my wife got involved in anything in our community was starting as a room mom or a team mom for
Right.
different sports and activities, and that just kind of led from one thing to the next into bigger and better things. And we're so proud and so excited that we just had a community event called Holiday on High Street here in Moore Park, California, and it was our fifth year. We had 8,000 people in attendance. It's a big holiday tree lighting experience, and it's like we look back at year one and we did it within a couple weeks, and a couple thousand people is kind of a fun thing. And it just, everything seems to just kind of grow, right? You get your foot in the door with helping in the classroom, and before you know it, you're putting on an event for thousands of people. But it's very rewarding to be part of the community, and not just part of the community but someone that actually makes a difference. And I think as martial arts school owners and martial arts instructors, we do that anyway because we're sending out kids into our community to do things like you're talking about
Sure.
with leadership, but they're also becoming more engaged and more involved in community service. And that's something that we really pride ourselves in our school, is teaching them that. And we have projects just like you mentioned, for our black belt team and our black belt students candidates that are coming up to be involved in things like that. And that's just what makes where we live that much better. Now, of course, we live in a town of only 34,000, which I'm sure is much smaller than where you're at, probably, but maybe not. But
Mm.
it doesn't matter if you're big or small community. You can always make a difference, and I think that that is something that sometimes is lacking in martial arts schools. They think that they're serving their community just by teaching, but there's so much more that can be done, and I think should be done, because your community is who supports you. The community
Right.
is what makes your business thrive. So why not give back and do everything you can?
Yeah, and we just got done with pictures with Santa. So myself and a friend of mine, we pair up together, and we have Santa Claus come in, and he comes in 4 hours at a time. We have free cookies and pictures. We send those over to them, and it's all free community events. So we had a couple hundred people Saturday do that. So yeah, things
Hmm.
like that we do. But again, I'm not to go against what you said, but I'm one of those guys that is a little bit anti some things at certain seasons. So I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. You just have to make sure it's the right season, because there was a time we were doing everything. I mean, we were doing
Hmm.
board breaking seminars, and we were doing all the community things and the parades and the this and the that, and we were doing so many things. And then from there, my daughter, who was 16, she's 22 at the time now, got a migraine as we're opening our second location, and we didn't know that migraine was going to last, and it had lasted. It's still, she's 7 years later, still has that same migraine. So medical expenses started racking up, right? And then we opened up the second company with a second mortgage, and it didn't do well. I mean, quite honestly, it didn't take off like I thought it would, and we got in more debt, right? But we're still
Hmm.
living. We're still on Facebook, like we're doing everything. We're still doing all the events, and those were like traumas. They were like actual traumas to us, and we just kept. We're fine. We're just going to keep on pushing. We're just going to keep on going. And so, one of the questions I saw that you had sent over is kind of something to think about, is what advice would I have for people? And it is, don't just say we're fine. We're just going to keep pushing through this. If you had major damage to your car, you're not going to get on the highway and just start driving it and say it's fine. It's going to be fine. You're going to just collect more and more damage as you go. There has to be a season where you restore and get it back to where it needs to be. And sometimes I think it's okay to say, this year we're not doing this. This year
Hmm.
we need to just be okay. And I didn't learn that the easy way. So I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but even just this past couple of years, we're fine. We're just going to keep on pushing. And when you keep on pushing, you keep running into things. Like, why do I keep running into things? And so 2020 to us, as hard as it was for a lot of people, was a year of restoration for my family because we were able to say, oh, we're just gonna online classes. We're just gonna do that for right now. And sure, there was stresses that were associated with it, but we were blessed with a season where we got to just breathe,
Hmm.
and then that helped us to get back to where, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Let's make sure we're making the maximum impact, but also there has to be margin. There can't always be get up at 6 a.m. and then die in the bed at 10:30. So there has to be some margin built in, and there has to be some purpose behind that. And so that was a big eye opener for us. We moved into a house that's $100,000 less expensive. It's our dream house for sure, but it's a fixer upper. And has been, right. And so it's like, what's the season that I'm in right now? What do I need to do right now? There was, with all the debt that we have, 2018, I remember we took our camper with us down to Florida to this RV resort called Sun and Fun. We'll be there again this year, without the camper, but it's a really nice, it's an RV resort. Doesn't sound that nice, but it's a very high end resort. A lot of retirees go down there, a lot of families. We were literally listening to Dave Ramsey talk about how when the wheels fall off, what are you going to do? When our tire popped off in Atlanta, Georgia, heading home, I had to ask my at that time 21-year-old daughter for her credit card because we were so leveraged because of what we said yes to, and the
Hmm.
company that was failing, and the medical bills, and we're going to go to Florida anyway. We're fine. And literally the wheels were falling off as Dave Ramsey is probably chuckling in the background somewhere. And we're using my daughter's credit card. We said, no, we're not doing this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. And
Hmm.
so literally since 2018, we moved to this other house. We're way in margin now as far as finances go. Debt's paid off, and like we're looking at a life now that we were hustling so hard for before, and just getting a rhythm, getting a rhythm that works and makes sense. So, you just got to take time sometimes to step back and say, why am I doing all? I'm killing myself,
Hmm.
and restore what you are, restore yourself, and then make your priorities, and then go from there.
Well, I do love that advice, and I don't think that it goes against anything that I said before. I think that it's actually great advice because it's something that my wife and I have actually talked about several times over, many different times. And even most recently, we said, hey, 2023 is going to be our year of slowing it down a little bit. And, we have done a lot and we have some great connections and we've put our effort there. But, sometimes it's okay to let other people do things too. It's
Sure,
okay to
absolutely.
step back and as you said, restore and just breathe a bit. So I would agree with that advice 100%. I think it's great advice. So thank you for sharing that and adding that to this here. Well, guys, listen, man. We've had a great conversation for almost 55 minutes here, and we're getting ready to wrap up. If you have any last minute questions, anything that you want to add to the conversation, please go ahead and comment. Of course, we have someone some kind of spam coming in here that someone wants to offer promotion for the channel. Thank you very much for that. I'll be deleting that later. Um, but Mr. Mershad, thank you so much for just sharing your story. I love helping people share their story and just kind of talk a little bit, freely about, just the history of your school and your family. And I think that if we just get one person to watch this that goes, yeah, I like that. I can learn from that. Or just this last bit of advice about taking a step back and not having to do everything right now, and taking time to restore. I think that that's great advice. So if we can make a difference in just one person's life by this conversation today, I know that we'll both be happy with that. But I've enjoyed the conversation and just taking the time with you today. If you can hang out for about 60 seconds, I'll be right back and we'll have a post interview wrap up. But thank you everybody for watching today. Coming up this Wednesday, I got Gino Rivera coming up. You guys want to check that out? SoCal Pro Wrestler. That'll be a lot of fun. And we got so many great guests coming up in December and looking at 2023. This started out as a one interview show a week, and now it's looking like we're going to be doing two or three. But the guests just keep coming and having great stories. So thank you guys all for watching and share, subscribe, comment. You know what to do. Mr. Mershad, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Absolutely appreciate it.
All right. I'll be right back in about 60 seconds.